I'm your host, Shreem bin Mohammed Rafi, and here is your YouTube channel, Zamir Universal. If Pakistan, Turkey, Russia, and China do not act now and do not send their air force and their soldiers either through Jordan or through Egypt, then it's tough luck. It's now or never. Now you see the rogue state, Zionist apartheid, the criminals, baby killers who have played havoc in Gaza, and the world stood by. And you can see the hypocrisy of despicable, disgusting, and disgraceful West. And you called it a Western society as civilized. I think they are the society of animals. And you see that there only 11 people were killed when a cartoonist, Charlie, his people who had tried to belittle the Prophet of Islam of 1.9 million Muslims in the world and hurt them spiritually. The whole Western leaders got together and got hand in hand, and they walked in Paris for just protesting for the death of those 11 people. What about the death of 186 people in Gaza? What about the babies killed? What about the decapitated babies? What about the charred and those, the women had their heads of the babies decapitated before they had cesarean section without anesthesia? Was it your mother? Was it your wife or your daughter? And going through this, is there anyone in the whole world, including that idiot, that sleepy Joe, one of the weakest presidents, one has to spit on his face, despicable, disgusting, disgraceful. The world will remember not only just that disgraceful man, but the whole of America who you keep paying taxes and don't come out on the roads and protest against this bloody epic and the bloody people, the friends of, the Democrats, the friends of the Republicans, the friends of the conservatives and friends of the labor in all over the Europe, the Jews just bloody pushing you as a, anima through your back, the money, and that's all you buy your soul through that. Hell with you, one has to really spit on such a civilization, and you call yourself as any superior and have any care for the human rights. Why the hell any one of your West countries, Paris, England, all other, America, why did you not come and held your hands together to protest against the Israelis and tell them to stop this nonsense, if you don't have any respect. Instead, you are with American taxpayers' money, with the Muslims' taxpayers' money, with the African Americans' taxpayer money, with the Latino taxpayers' money, with all the people who are living there in United States, Germans, Chinese, all those people who are there in Silicon Valley, and really the technology. Look at the MIT professors, the mathematicians, the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Aga Khanis. Look at those who pays them the money. And you, none of you, you shameful, you came up to protest and you stopped them to have a ceasefire, and you had 186,000 people killed or wounded. This is according to the Lancet, which is a very prestigious medical journal published in the United States of America, quoting you the figures. And look at that orthopedic man from North Carolina who found bullets in back of the heads of toddlers, kids, direct into the heart. It's not by accident. You kill deliberately, and your padris or your the people in your synagogue sitting justifying killing children and raping, and could you have any more despicable Jewish father have been sodomizing and been sexually assaulting his own son, who when became adult, he confronted him. So it's a common practice that they rape their own daughter and their own son. So you want these Jews to be alive and be around in this world when they are worse than pigs and animals? I think the people who really practice Torah and who are real Jews and who have faith in Torah and who believe in Prophet Moses and Abraham should get rid of this menace and this dirt and filth. And those pure Jews are the one who should take over the rest of the world and, get rid of their, this Starbucks, get rid of all those, their big businesses of these Zionists, these people who promote pornography, sodomy, they sponsor LGBT, they sponsor all sexual perversions. I think these are the one you people have to get rid of. And my question is to the Jews, real Jews. I don't think these 90% of the people who call themselves Jews are real Jews. None of them are. Those the small percentage you call them ultra orthodox, but they are the only one which are left are the real Jews. And I think the history is going to take you back from the time of Prophet Moses. Out of 14 tribes, the 12 walked away. So these bald-headed, womenizers, these people who are sell the child and child molesters are those from the 12 tribes who walk away. They appeared in many forms. In Hitler's form, they were overrepresented with 60 million Germans, 2 only percent. And look, they played havoc with the money, with the banking, and in the plays. They are the one who first produced adultery and sodomy on the plays, and they promoted every evil which is satanic. The Iblis or the Satan wanted to get you to the deepest pits of the hell. So you see, they are Satan. And now if the Pakistani Air Force and the Pakistani warheads with the nuclear missiles, they and the Turkish army and the Turkish Air Force, along with the Russian, the jets and Air Force and their interballistic missiles, and along with the Chinese forces, and if they do not enter now the West Bank, now then you forget about the Palestine. And I think if they has any shame, Putin or the chairman Xi, then they must send their army, and they should care at all for Jordan or Egypt, because they have eye after the Philadelphia corridor on the whole of Sinai desert. So imagine this troublemaker, this one bloody beast. And I show you the picture of those 5 people. Please mark them, put them on your table, and whenever you get a chance, hang them by the neck. They are the troublemaker, but their leader is Natenyahu. So once you get rid of Natenyahu, and please also get rid of his stepfather, which is the United States of America, with your tax money, who keeps giving them. He's got broken roads, he's got broken bridges, he has broken railways, but you look what right they have to support this illegitimate child. And if they don't stop it, then I think, I'm sorry, then nobody will believe Putin, nobody will believe China or Pakistan, India. They should throw their, I think, armies to drown in the ocean, or they take all their force. And I am amazed about Rahil Sharif heading all those 35 Muslim countries' armies, sitting in Saudi Arabia and sipping kava. Why the hell don't you send this? They have F-35, the Saudis have. They don't have training. They don't have trained pilots. What about Pakistani pilots? They are trained. Turkish are trained enough. Russians are trained enough. Chinese are trained enough. So they bought the jets. Give them the jets. If they had given these jets to Hamas, they would have never dared bloody flatten north and south of Gaza. And that's what they're going to do to Lebanon. Now it's the turn of West Bank, and soon you are seeing that they are with the Egypt. And Sisi should die of shame, because he is the one who was supporting and pussyfooting. Now, damn you, with $2.2 billion you get as a bribe by your soul. Now save your country. You won't. Egyptians will spit on your face also, and the same will do with Pakistani's leadership, and they will do it with the Turkish and Saudis. If you don't now get up and say, it's not just the duty of Iran. Why should it only be the Fiqh Jafriya or the Shia Muslims to do all this thing, or all these proxies? Why on earth the 90% of the Sunni population of these 5 countries I've just mentioned, they have all the things. They have trained pilots, they have trained armies, strongest army. They have even nukes. What for you have the nukes? Why the whole Muslim world celebrated and jumped and danced when you made declaration that you have a nuclear weapon and you exploded? Get it now then. Otherwise, throw it in the ocean and never show your face. How will you, when you die, will show your face to the creator of this world? That 40 years after the first mosque was built in Haram Kaaba, see that the next second mosque in the whole world on this planet was Masjid al-Aqsa, and you want that to go now be destroyed? Now don't sit back, get up, rise now again and stop.
नाज़रीन, तुर्की से सबसे बड़ी खबर आपके साथ शेयर कर रहे हैं कि मुसाद नेटवर्क तुर्की ने पकड़ा है और सबसे हाई प्रोफाइल शख्सियत तुर्की की जानिब से मुसाद की धर ली गई है और इजराइल की इस वक्त दौड़े लग गई हैं, क्योंकि एक तो तुर्की के साथ उनका फड्डा चल भी रहा है और फिर उनकी हाई प्रोफाइल शख्सियत का तुर्की में पकड़ा जाना ये किसी तौर पर इजराइल को हजम नहीं हो रहा। ईरान से बड़ी खबर ये सामने आ रही है कि ईरान ने एक नया टैंक जो है वो मुतारफ करवाया है। ये मॉडर्न मींस के मुताबिक है और ज़बरदस्त टैंक है। इसके ऊपर भी दुनिया काफ़ी जब फोकस कर रही है, इस बारे में भी आपको बताएंगे। हमास के हवाले से बड़ी खबर ये सामने आ रही है कि शुमाली गजा में हजारों नए फाइटर्स उन्होंने भर्ती कर लिए हैं। मलबे से हमास ज्यादा पावरफुल होकर सामने आ रही है, जो है ज्यादा फिरोशियसली वो लड़ती हुई नजर आ रही है और कोई चांस नजर नहीं आ रहा इजराइल को कि वो हमास को किसी तौर पर हरा सके। तो उनके तमाम मंसूबे जो हैं वो नाकाम हो रहे हैं और जो ये खबरें गजा से आ रही हैं कि हमास तो अभी भी कायम है बल्कि वो मजबूत हो रही है, तो इधर से जो पस्त हौसले हैं वो मजीद पस्त हो रहे हैं। जो इजराइल के इत्तेहादी हैं वो इस सोच में, अब आप देख रहे हैं कि बरतानिया ने असला बंद कर दिया, इधर उधर सारी चीजें साथ साथ हो रही हैं। तो जब ये रिपोर्ट्स आ रही हैं कि हमास तो हारने वाली नहीं है, तो उनकी पॉलिसीज में मजीद शिफ्ट आ रहा है कि भाई फिर हम इस जेनोसाइड को कब तक सपोर्ट करते रहे कि जब हमास को इजराइल हरा ही नहीं सका और ना करीब करीब हरा सकता है, तो हम इसको मजीद ड्रैग ऑन क्यों करें। तो इस बारे में आपको बताएंगे। ये जो ताज़ा तरीन रिपोर्ट सामने आई है तुर्की और सीरिया का जबरदस्त इत्तेहाद की, इसका नाम जी है रेक्शिपी और ही इज द फर्स्ट हाई प्रोफाइल मुसाद ऑपरेटिव अरेस्टेड इन टर्की दिस ईयर। इस साल में यह सबसे बड़ी हाई प्रोफाइल शख्सियत है जो पकड़ी गई है। एज द कंट्री हैज इंटेंसिफाइड इट्स एफर्ट्स अगेंस्ट सस्पेक्टेड मुसाद मेंबर्स, क्योंकि बड़ी इंटेंसिफाइड एफर्ट्स तुर्की कर रहा है मुसाद के खिलाफ। He was allegedly transferring funds to Mossad agents। अब ये वो मतलब हाई प्रोफाइल शख्सियत इस तरह से है कि इसके नीचे बहुत सारे एजेंट्स काम कर रहे थे, ये सबको मॉनिटर करता था, फंड करता था। और ये काम क्या कर रहा था? who used to drones to film targets, मुख्तलिफ टारगेट्स की जो फुटेजेस हैं और ड्रोन्स वो वीडियोस वगैरह सर्विलेंस और मॉनिटरिंग की जा रही थी ड्रोन्स के जरिए। कंडक्टेड साइकोलॉजिकल ऑपरेशंस अगेंस्ट पैलेस्टीनियन पॉलिटिशियंस, और इसके ज़िम्मे ये काम था कि ये साइकोलॉजिकल ऑपरेशंस फलस्तीनी सियासतदानों के खिलाफ कर रहा था। एंड गैदरिंग इंटेलिजेंस ऑन सीरिया, और सीरिया शाम के ऊपर जो है ये इंटेलिजेंस गैदर कर रहा था। ये 4-5 इसके बड़े काम आर मोर इंपॉर्टेंट इन द फील्ड एंड टेक्निकल मूवमेंट्स एंड द इस्लामिक रिपब्लिक ऑफ ईरान विल रिस्पॉन्ड वाइजली। कि ये जो स्ट्रेटेजिक कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज होते हैं ना, ये ज्यादा अहमियत रखते हैं टैक्टिकल मूवमेंट से। टैक्टिकल ये होता है कि वक्ती मतलब फिल फॉर कोई इधर उधर की चालाकियां करना, ये होता है टैक्टिकल। जो होता है ना स्ट्रेटेजिक, वो लॉन्ग टर्म में होता है कि आप लंबा सोचते हैं कि आपको करना क्या है। यानी जैसे ज़ेलेंस्की जो है वो टैक्टिकल, उसने एक मूव खेली कि वो रशिया के अंदर दाखिल हो गया, अब वो वहां पर उसको इतना नुकसान हो रहा है कि प्यूटन ने आगे से फौरी रिएक्ट नहीं किया, तो वो वहां पर फंस गया। यानी एक टैक्टिकल मूव उसने खेली। तो इधर से ईरान ये कह रहा है कि हम टैक्टिकल मूव्स के ऊपर नहीं, कि हम इमीडिएट रिस्पॉन्ड करके बताएंगे हम बड़े ताकतवर हैं, ये नहीं, हम जरा स्ट्रेटेजिकली देख रहे हैं और बड़े वाइजली चीजों को देख रहे हैं और उसके मुताबिक जो है रिस्पॉन्ड करेंगे। बहरहाल आगे नज़र चलते हैं तो बड़ी खबर जो है वो हमास के हवाले से आ रही है। हमास के हवाले से खबर इजरायली मीडिया ये शेयर कर रहा है कि 3000 फाइटर्स उन्होंने रिक्रूट किए हैं सिर्फ शुमाली गजा के अंदर। इस वक्त हजारों फाइटर्स हमास के पास हैं, कोऑर्डिनेटेड हैं, ऑर्गेनाइज्ड हैं, स्ट्रक्चर्ड हैं। पीछे कमांड सेंटर मौजूद है, याहिया सिमर अलदेव मौजूद हैं और पूरे कमांडर्स उनको मतलब डायरेक्शन दे रहे हैं और एक पूरी कमांड के अंदर जंग लड़ी जा रही है। ऐसा नहीं है कि मेन कमांड पीछे से डिस्ट्रॉय हो गई है, लेकिन उसके बावजूद मजीद फाइटर जो हैं वो भर्ती किए जा रहे हैं। बहुत बड़ी नंबर है, बहुत बड़े, 3000 सिर्फ शुमाली गजा के अंदर। इजरायली मीडिया की जुबानी देखिए, Hamas has rebuilt its capabilities in the northern Gaza Strip and recruited 3000 new militants। 3000 मजीद फाइटर जो है उन्होंने भर्ती कर लिया। अकॉर्डिंग टू अ सिक्योरिटी सोर्स इन द ऑक्यूपेशन, हमास वाज एबल टू रिस्टोर इट्स कैपेबिलिटीज इन द नॉर्दर्न गाजा स्ट्रिप। तो आप ये अंदाजा करें कि इतने सारे हरबे आजमाने के बावजूद ये मिलिट्री मिरेकल है, ये नाकाबिले बयान है कि हमास आज तक इनसे खत्म नहीं हो सकी, बल्कि वो ज्यादा ताकतवर होकर सामने आ रही है। वो मलबे कमांडर बन चुका है और यही वो कमांडर जिसने बयान दिया था कि 1 साल से पहले इसराइल जो है वो खत्म हो जाएगा, जिसके ऊपर फिर दुनिया भर में इस बयान को शेयर किया गया, मीडिया में डिस्कस हुआ, आर्टिकल्स लिखे गए। ये वो आज इसका नया आर्टिकल आया, उसकी मैं सिर्फ 2 स्टेटमेंट्स आपके साथ शेयर करना चाहता हूं। कंटिन्यूइंग द वॉर इज एन एग्जिस्टेंशियल थ्रेट टू इसराइल, नॉट हमास। जंग को जारी रखना, जो हम ये सोचकर बैठे हुए और हमें बार बार यही बताया जा रहा है कि जंग लंबी चलेगी तो हम जीतेंगे और इसको हम जितना बढ़ाएंगे एक ना एक दिन हमास को हम शिकस्त दे देंगे। बल्कि नेतन्याहू तो ये कहता है कि हम 1 स्टेप अवे खड़े हुए हैं और बस हमास को हमने अभी इजरायली आर्मी चीफ का क्या बयान आया था 3-4 दिन पहले कि हमने रफा ब्रिगेड को शिकस्त दे दी है, और उसके ऊपर इजरायली मीडिया ने लिखा कि झूठ बोलना बंद करें इजरायली आर्मी चीफ के बयान के ऊपर। तो वो कह रहा है कि जितना जंग बढ़ रही है, इजराइल खत्म हो रहा है, हमास सवाल ही पैदा नहीं होता, हमास को कोई खतरा ही नहीं है, हमास खत्म हो ही नहीं सकती है। तो असल में इजराइल की जड़ें खोखली होती चली जा रही हैं और इजराइल अपने खात्मे की तरफ बढ़ रहा है। ये अगेन मैं नहीं कह रहा, ये उनका टॉप जनरल कह रहा है। Netanyahu's position on the Philadelphia corridor is a death sentence for the kidnap and an endless war of attrition। ये जो फिलाडेल्फिया कॉरिडोर की बिला वजह की जिद नेतन्याहू ने बनाई हुई है कि नहीं नहीं हमने तो इधर रहना है, फिलाडेल्फिया बहुत जरूरी है, बेतुकी ये जो शर्त है इज टू ब्रिंग इजराइल इनटू गाजा फॉरएवर एंड दिस इज नॉट ओनली फुलिशनेस बट इवल इटसेल्फ। फिलाडेल्फिया के ऊपर रहकर और इस मुआहदे को किसी हतमी नतीजे के साथ चलाना ये कैसे पॉसिबल होगा? और वेस्ट बैंक में तो एक अजबी मंजर वहां पर आ रहा है कि जिस तरह से रेजिस्टेंस सामना कर रही है। आप जरा हिजबुल्लाह के हवाले से देखिए, जो ताजा तरीन खबर सामने आ रही है, इजरायली मीडिया रिपोर्ट कर रहा है, द नॉर्थ इज अंडर फायर, अ नंबर ऑफ एंटी टैंक मिसाइल्स वर फायर्ड अ शॉर्ट व्हाइल अगो टुवर्ड्स अरब अल अरमशा इन द गलीली। जो नॉर्थ है वो ऑन फायर है, तबाही है नॉर्थ के अंदर। तो मैंने आपको फलस्तीन की सबसे बड़ी फतह है और इजराइल का असल चेहरा सामने आ जाना, यह सबसे बड़ी फतह है। जो बरतानिया ने इकदाम उठाया है उसकी भी बहुत तारीफ हो रही है और उसके भी बहुत इंपैक्ट्स हैं। मिसाल के तौर पर जॉर्डन का बयान देखिए, विदाउट रियल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज नेतन्याहू विल नॉट, क्यों ये है, इससे ना तो हमारे कैदी वापस आएंगे बल्कि ये उनके लिए एक डेथ सेंटेंस देने के मुतरादिफ है। और एंडलेस वॉर ऑफ एट्रिशन, यानी ये लंबी जंग चलेगी जो हमारे लिए वॉर ऑफ एट्रिशन बन जाएगी। वॉर ऑफ एट्रिशन इस बात को कहते हैं कि जिसमें कोई आहिस्ता आहिस्ता खत्म होता चला जाता है। तो वो कह रहा है हमारे लिए ये वॉर ऑफ एट्रिशन बन जाएगी, इसमें हमारे लिए कोई फतह नहीं है। हेरड्स इसराइल का बहुत बड़ा मीडिया, उसके 3 स्टेटमेंट्स मैं आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूं। यानी ये खबर आई ना कि 3000 फाइटर्स उन्होंने मजीद भर्ती कर लिया, हमास तो खड़ी है और स्ट्रॉन्ग है, तो उसके ऊपर तजिए हो रहे हैं। Philadelphia corridor will be paved with prisoner bodies on the way to reoccupying the Gaza Strip। हेरड्स ये लिख रहा है कि फिलाडेल्फिया के ऊपर रहना, नेतन्याहू चाह रहा है कि जंग जारी रहे और यहां पर रहने की हमें कीमत यह चुकानी पड़ेगी कि प्रिजनर्स की बॉडीज हमें रिसीव करना पड़ेगी। द गोल ऑफ द डिसीजन टू कंट्रोल द फिलाडेल्फिया कॉरिडोर
हो जाएगी और फाइनली ये मोमेंट्स आने वाले हैं कि फौज ने पूरी तरह हथियार फेंक देने हैं कि भाई हमने लड़ाई नहीं करनी, बस काफ़ी हो गया, हमने लड़ाई करनी ही नहीं है। अब ज़रा आप सूरत हाल का जायज़ा ले लें। इजराइल ने अब ये काम ये करना शुरू किया है जी, एक और 7 अक्टूबर होने वाला है और इस दफ़ा गालिबन वेस्ट बैंक में होगा, फलाना होगा, यानी वो उन्होंने पहले से ही अवाम को कहना शुरू कर दिया एक बड़ी जंग के लिए तैयार है। इसराइल की फोर्सेस इस वक्त मुकम्मल तौर पर तबाही का शिकार हो रही हैं। देखिए उनके कई हजार फौजी, सबसे पहले तो आप जेल में रखिएगा, मारे गए हैं और सबसे बढ़कर उनकी बहुत बड़ी तादाद के अंदर ऐसे हैं जो डिसेबल भी हो गए। अब उसके अलावा जो बाकी हैं उनको पोस्ट ट्रॉमेटिक स्ट्रेस डिसऑर्डर है वो, यानी आप सोचे गजा के अंदर लड़ाई की है, देखिए इस वक्त 333 दिन हो गए इस जंग को, तो गजा में उन्होंने लड़ाई की है, वो वापस आए हैं और वो कह रहे हैं कि भाई हमने लड़ाई करनी नहीं है। तो अब आप सोचें कि इसराइल में जब आपने ग्राउंड फोर्सेस ने ये काम कर दिया है, ये ग्राउंड फोर्सेस का जब चीफ जाता है तो फिर याद रहे ग्राउंड के ऊपर मामला काफी खराब समझे जाते हैं। बार बार शिन बैत और बाकी ताकतें इनको पैगाम दे रही हैं कि जंग बड़ी खतरनाक हो रही है, हम दुनिया भर की सपोर्ट खोते जा रहे हैं और जो आपके साथ खड़ा होगा अवाम उसके खिलाफ इस वक्त इकदाम करेगी। दूसरा आप ये देखें कि नेतन्याहू एक और गेम प्लान कर रहा है, वो जुडिशरी को भी काबू करने की भरपूर तैयारी कर रहा है। तो यानी वहां पर एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल क्राइसिस भी खड़ा हुआ है। देखिए नेतन्याहू सीधी सी बात ये कह रहा है, उसने अवाम को जाकर ये बात कह दी, उसने कह दी आप मुझ पर प्रेशर डाल रहे हैं, सड़क पर आप निकले हुए हैं, आप कह रहे हैं ये काम करूं, आपको वो चीज़ नजर नहीं आ रही जो मैं देख रहा हूं, अगर हम यहाँ से निकल गए तो फिर ये मौका हमारे हाथ नहीं है। यानी वो धड़ल्ले से कह रहा है हम यहाँ से निकल गए तो फिर उसके बाद दोबारा हम यहाँ पर आ नहीं पाएंगे। यानी वो अवाम को खुले अल्फाज में बताना चाह रहा है कि देखो तुम्हारे आबाओ अजदाद ने 2000 साल कुर्बानियाँ दी हैं, हमने लड़ाई की है, आज अगर हमारे हाथ से ये इलाके निकल गए तो वो फिर हमारी बादशाहत कायम कैसे होगी। देखिए बरतानिया के जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं उसके खिलाफ नेतन्याहू अब मैदान में उतरा हुआ है, कहता है तुम्हारी जुर्रत किस तरह है, तुम्हारी देखा देखी बाकी भी ये काम करेंगे। यानी अब असल में हो ये रहा है कि बरतानिया के शिप तबाह किए जा रहे हैं और बरतानिया को आहिस्ता आहिस्ता अब एक ग्राउंड बनानी है जिसमें वो यमन के साथ अपने मामला तय करें। देखिए यही सूरत हाल है कि यूक्रेन की जंग में भी इसी तरह यूरोप की कंट्रीज आगे यानी टूट टूट कर अलग हो रही हैं और यहाँ से भी इसराइल के खिलाफ इकदाम हो रहे हैं। तो कुल मिलाकर आज देखें उनकी फौज के अंदर एक बहुत बड़ी लड़ाई है। अब पहले होता ये था कि पावर के लिए जर्नैल एक दूसरे को कुचल कर ऊपर जाते थे, अब सूरत हाल ये है कि पावर के लिए नहीं, अब सीन कुछ इस तरह से है कि भाई हमने पावर नहीं लेनी, हम जा रहे हैं, हमें जंग हारती हुई नजर आ रही है, हमें पता है कि हम शिकस्त खा चुके हैं। सो अब आप ये सोचें कि जब ऐसी सूरत हाल होती है और चीफ का चले जाना ये कोई छोटी बात नहीं है, तैयार रहे, शायद हो सकता है कि मामला मजीद जब खराब होंगे तो आर्मी चीफ भी रिजाइन कर दे और वो फिर उसके बाद सीधा ब्लेम सारा डाल दे नेतन्याहू के ऊपर कि अवाम जाने ये जाने, क्योंकि खतरा ये है कि नेतन्याहू न से
in Gaza. It has not destroyed Hamas or other Palestinian resistance groups, and nor has it freed its remaining hostages. But even worse for the Zionist state, it not only stares down a war on all fronts, but also it has unintentionally united the Arab world against it, as illustrated by this stunning development last week, in which the Arab League removed Hezbollah from its classification of terrorist organizations, a classification that both it and the Gulf Cooperation Council gave to Hezbollah in 2016. When it accused the group of inciting sectarian violence in Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. This reclassification is Israel's worst nightmare coming to bear, because this is the collapse of its divide and rule strategy in the Middle East. Hamas set the trap for Israel, and Israel swallowed the bait, hook, line, and sinker. Its relentless and merciless genocide in Gaza has caused so much anger and humiliation in the Arab world that it is bearing the deep divides which emerged after the Arab Spring. This sudden turn of events threatens the very survival of the Jewish state, with ordinary Israeli citizens coming face to face with reality. The realization that Israel's colonial enterprise is on the brink of collapse. They aren't stupid. They see what's happening, which is why they are now fleeing the country in record numbers, with a new report showing that more than 500,000 have fled without plans for returning. This number is expected to double and even quadruple to 2 million Israelis fleeing the country within coming weeks as conflict against Hezbollah escalates along Israel's northern border. That 2 million from a total population of 7 million are planning to leave is the sum total of every Zionist's worst nightmare. But the message to Zionist Jews from the entire Middle East is this: don't let the door smack you on the ass on the way out. And yes, that sounds like unnecessary gloating, but it's important to understand that Israelis have only their government to blame, because this trend began well before October 7th, with a July 2023 survey finding that 28% had plans of leaving Israel out of fears that the country was headed towards civil war and violence due to internal political schisms.
If the situation will be so bad, it's worsening every day. We will find a place to live outside Israel. We all have European passports.
And others also think of emigrating as hardline ministers push through highly controversial laws that would weaken oversight of the government by the courts.
Unfortunately, many of my friends check the options in other countries.
I will not raise my kids in a country which is not democratic.
Today, Israelis are getting a taste of their own medicine, and by all accounts, they don't like it. And because the Middle East is not their native home, they are grabbing their American or European passports and heading quickly for the exits, telling a waiting journalist how terrifying it has become to illegally occupy another people's land.
I just had the worst experience of my life. I was in Florentine and I heard the rockets go off and my whole life changed.
This underscores the point that Palestinians have been yelling at the top of their voices for years. That Jewish settlers have the luxury of running to their countries of origin when times get tough, whereas Palestinians have nowhere else to go. This is their land, their indigenous homeland, and therefore they will defend it to the very last man, woman and child, even when faced with genocide. The people of Gaza are going nowhere. Israel, on the other hand, is now faced with a massive shortfall of soldiers. It needs 10,000 new recruits immediately, which is why the Israeli Supreme Court ruled last week that ultra-Orthodox Jews must be subject to the military draft, after decades of being exempt from military service. Now watch how Israeli forces treated those who protested the ruling. This is the manifestation of Zionist desperation. This is Israel on the verge of collapse. This is like watching the dying days of Nazi Germany when it forced young boys and old men to fight against the advancing Allied forces. Israel is done. It simply cannot cope with multiple wars on multiple fronts, while its young men and women dodge military conscription by taking extended vacations with their families in New York, London and Paris. This is a lesson that Russia has learnt during its occupation of Ukraine. Its men don't wish to die defending stolen land, which is why millions of Russians of military age are vacationing in Asia, forcing Putin to send jailed criminals to the front lines. Which begs the question, what Jew in their right mind would want to move to Israel and fight for the Zionist army, given Israel is the most dangerous place in the world for Jews, and given Israeli soldiers are ordered to shoot their comrades in the back to prevent them from being taken captive? Israel's military recruitment crisis has been brewing for some time.
It's a rite of passage in Israeli society. When you turn 18, you serve mandatory military service. 2 years for women, nearly 3 for men. But for some young Jewish Israelis, something is changing.
When you think of Israel's military in one word, what do you think?
3 words, wrong side of history.
What about you?
Apartheid.
These teenagers are burning their draft letters, part of an unprecedented movement to refuse to join the army. For many, one of Israel's most cherished public institutions.
Our society is violent because everyone is holding weapons.
Making matters worse for ordinary Israelis is the country's rapidly deteriorating economy. The currency is in freefall, tourism has dried up, the housing market has crashed, and gross domestic production has plummeted nearly 20%. The only metric that has improved is the unemployment rate. But this is because so many have quit their jobs, packed up their belongings, and fled the country, a reality that's seen more than 1 in 3 businesses close since the start of the year.
A lot of small businesses closed already because they didn't have the help and not a lot of work. We have here 3 or 4 restaurants and mini markets that...
Israel's economy is expected to go from bad to worse. The Jewish state is isolated diplomatically and culturally like never before, as it sits in the dock at The Hague for committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. So when you add all of these pieces together, along with the wars it soon won't be able to fight, you come to understand why upwards of 2 million Jewish settlers plan to self-deport from Israel within the coming weeks and months. You might call this karmic or godly justice. Others might call it a new biblical exodus, but I liken the mass exodus of Jewish migrants from Palestinian land to a reverse Nakba. In other words, realities on the ground are encouraging Jewish migrants to leave, therefore invoking memories of how these same Jewish migrants forcibly expelled nearly 1 million Palestinians from their homes in 1948 to pave the way for a Jewish supremacist state. The irony couldn't be made starker, and karma is a bitter pill to swallow. I hope these fleeing Israelis take this lesson from history. I hope they take this moment to understand that their phony country is built on stolen land and constructed on killing, displacing, and dispossessing the indigenous Palestinian population. I hope they remember how this campaign of ethnic cleansing began in the 1920s, when newly arrived Jewish migrants formed themselves into terrorist groups like the Haganah, Stone Gang, and Ergun to terrorize native Palestinians and pressure the British forces into leaving Palestine. An effort that culminated in the bombing of Jerusalem's King David Hotel in 1946, which killed 96 British soldiers and diplomats. This is when the British media rightly called Jewish settlers terrorists, because terrorism is how Israel was created. These are indeed the final, dying days of the Zionist state. In trying to destroy the Palestinian people, Israel has only succeeded in destroying itself. Its military has been exposed as weak, ineffective, and uncommitted. Global opinion has turned sharply in favor of the Palestinians, and the Arab world is now uniting against the Zionist state. And on top of all of that, declining numbers of Jews are committed to defending the Zionist state to its inevitable end. This, however, doesn't mean there won't be many more dark days ahead. Israel will become more vicious and even more violent as it becomes ever more isolated, surrounded, and desperate. There's still more work to be done, but we will be here to report and counter every one of its atrocities, abuses.
This rabbi reveals why Muslims are true believers and why they are impossible to defeat.
The enemy of Yishmael, that Yishmael represents, is an enemy that cannot be defeated by conventional methods. Yishmael is the most difficult because they are the only one of our enemies that comes with a spiritual power.
It was during one of his teaching sessions when a Jewish student among the participants asked him a question about Muslims, known as the descendants of Ismail. In fact, the man wanted to know why God answers the prayers of Muslims whom he believes they are not on the right path. Let us first listen to his question and then the answer given by the rabbi.
My question is about the war. I remember when I was in yeshiva, you told us that the Arabs are such a difficult opponent because they do have certain supplications, and they have a certain connection with God. For example, they have circumcision, they have some version of halal food, they have modesty, and even some people would say they are better with modesty than we are. So my question is about something that I have been struggling with, because when I stand before God, I feel some kind of confusion and discouragement. And even if it has not happened to me, I can imagine that some people might even have some negative feeling, or even a feeling of betrayal, to see that the Arabs pray to God to hurt us, and God gives them success. We know that God answers their prayers because they succeed. So, how do we deal with that confusion? And do we have the right to stand in front of God and ask Him to listen to our prayers and ignore the prayers of the Arabs so that they can stop to hurt us?
Answering this question, the rabbi started by saying that it is one of the most difficult questions to which he has been struggling to find answers for years. He recognized that one of the strengths of Muslims is their spirituality. As descendants of Ismail, Muslims have strong spiritual heritage, including traditions of daily prayer, which puts them in strong connection with God. Muslims also have the benefits of the covenant of circumcision, which they inherited from Abraham.
Yep, it's a very, very difficult issue, and this is a concept that I admit has given me much confusion and uncertainty over the years. Rav Chaim Vital writes, based on Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, that the last and most difficult galus that Am Yisrael will face will be the confrontation with Yishmael. And he says Yishmael is the most difficult because they are the only one of our enemies that comes with a spiritual power. Meaning Esav, that represents physicality and brute force. So of course, in the long run at least, Ruchnius, spirituality defeats physicality. The danger of Yishmael is a much more subtle danger, because Yishmael comes not only with physical brutality, but Yishmael comes with spiritual merits. They are a child of Abraham, they have a koach of prayer, they have a merit of Brit Milah, again, which goes back to Abraham. There is a tznius.
In fact, the rabbi recognizes that the spiritual aspect of the descendants of Ismail sets them apart from other enemies of the Jews, as they can use their spiritual strength to achieve their goals, including to resist to any kind of threat, even if it means sacrificing their lives. For this reason, the rabbi asserted that to be able to face an enemy like the descendants of Ismail, there is a need to develop strategies based on greater spiritual strength.
And indeed, this is very, very clearly the case. If you think about this, the enemy of Yishmael, that Yishmael represents, is an enemy that cannot be defeated by conventional methods. There's no way to stop it, meaning there is no logical way of stopping people who are willing to die for their cause. What, they're threatened with death? Bring it on, gesundte hate. That's what I want. Mutual assured destruction only works when you either have cowards or at least normal people, people who don't want to die. But when you have people who don't care if they die, then how are you going to stop them? There's nothing you can do. So the dilemma is we need spiritual ways of defeating them. And yet we do find that prayer is such a miraculous power in the universe.
For Muslims, of course, this is not something new. And even if our current state may make us think otherwise, the reality is that our religion, if we follow it correctly, it gives us a winner's mindset thanks to the reliance on our Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that rabbi is well aware of that. Many Jews may delude themselves saying that Islam is not real religion, but the learned ones know for a fact that we worship the Creator of the heavens and the earth with complete devotion and pure monotheism. But there is something important to mention here. While answering the question, the rabbi said that because the descendants of Ismail have the power of spirituality that makes their prayers answered by God, they use this advantage to ask for bad things, including harm and evil upon others. Listen.
Because they have these merits, they can pray for bad things. And there's a certain power in their prayer.
No, this is not true. Muslims do not pray for harm or evil upon others, but this doesn't mean Muslims do not pray to God for strength to defend themselves while they are attacked or wronged. This is different from harming innocent people. The book says, "Permission to fight back is hereby granted to those being fought, for they have been wronged, and Allah is truly most capable of helping them prevail." This is one example where the use of force is allowed to defend oneself, but in another verse, we are told to be just and not to revenge. The verse says, "O believers, stand firm for Allah and bear true testimony. Do not let the hatred of a people lead you to injustice. Be just because that is closer to righteousness, and be mindful of Allah. Surely Allah is all aware of what you do." Thank you very much for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें। उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर